Welcome back, everybody. Do you find that you're not currently really frustrated and everything's going okay? Right, let's fix that. Let's add some frustration to today. What we're going to be looking at now is the different way that we can do animation. We've looked at how we can use animated GIFs, and we've just used an animated GIF, which is a predefined animated file format, so it's got this animation built in. GIFs are also unique because they don't store transparency data, which is why we didn't always have to remove the background for an animated GIF. Also, PNGs or animated PNGs have this property where they don't always have to store background data. What we're going to look at next is an alternate way of pulling in an animation into your sprite. We're going to look at the idea of Sprite Sheets. So what I've got now is I've got one that's already set up, and again you can download this from Moodle in the same place that you got this. I'm going to this time edit the sprite, so I'm already on SPR_player_running_R. Instead of loading a sprite this time, what I'm instead going to do is edit a sprite. So it takes us to this screen that we've got, but we're going to override this. We're going to completely redo it. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to go to File, Create from Strip, and we're going to create from an animation strip. The one that I'd like you to use is this one here. It's called Mario 3 on my machine. We are going to remove the background. And what we have here, yours should look something like this. So you should get that to come through. It's opened up this little window here. It's not currently full screen. Just maximize that, make that full screen. And what we'll have here is a box. And this box looks like a cookie cutter. It will chop through the graphic that we're going to use. And we're going to say, I want these graphics here. And we're going to use these ones. So what we're going to do is we're going to position our box where we want. But obviously this is too big because I'm going to create a bunch of them that are going to chop all of these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 out. So first thing we need to say is how many images do we want to cut out? Well, I want 7. That will put them in a row going vertically. And then I need to say, well, I want 7 in the same row. Just as a quick friendly heads up, if you ever do find yourself in a table column like this where you've got lots of tabs one after the other, that's what tab on your keyboard is designed for, to move through each one. So if you wanted to go from there to the one underneath, you can press tab. I think a lot of people know that you can press tab to move down. The question is, do you know the keyboard shortcut for going back up? So pressing tab moves down, shift and tab goes the opposite way. Sometimes it's a little bit quicker than physically clicking on with your mouse. So if you do see it jump from tab to tab, it's not wizardry. I'm just using tab or I'm using shift and tab to move up. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to alter the size of these boxes. So 32 by 32, a little bit too big. So I'm going to approximate here. I'm going to try 30. Does 30 work? No. 25. Does 25 work? Getting better. 22. Does 22 work? Yes, as long as I can resize it, perhaps still a little bit too small. 23, 24 seems perfect. What you can also do is modify the image height should you need to, and if you find that it's not precise enough to physically drag the box where you want, you can see it just modifies these values here, which is the horizontal pixel offset and the vertical pixel offset. So if you wanted that at exactly 19, you could put it at exactly 19, or if you wanted it at exactly 100, you can manually type in the values. Press OK, and that will generate your animation for you. And oh boy, Mario is excited today. He's moving far too quickly. And that is because, unlike the previous one, where we had a few more frames of animation it was going to play, this one's only got 7 images to play. Remember, we start counting at 0, so image 6, we've got 7 in total. What we can do, though, is we can stretch this animation. And we could do this before with the previous one as well, but the previous one was entirely fine. If I go to Animation and Stretch, notice I'm not transforming anymore. Transforming is solely to do with the graphic. I want to deal with the animation, which is here, and I'm going to stretch the animation. Thing to note is if you are going to stretch your animation to either make it quicker or take a little bit less time, make it a little bit faster, make sure that the number of frames is always a multiple of your starting one. So if you want it to be twice as fast, obviously we want that to be 14, 2 times 7. If we want that to be a little bit faster, we make it 3 times fast, we want that to be 21. I'm going to do 3 times as fast, and I'm going to press OK. Now is a much more appropriate pace. Let me explain why. We used to have 7 pictures on screen. We've now got our first frame, our first picture is still image 0, image 1, image 2, is the exact same picture. It's just copied it twice. And then these ones, it's the second picture that used to be on our list. Again, it's just copied that twice for us. You can use this technique to stretch your animation to make it shorter should you want to. So if you find it's too long, you want to set it back, you can do that, and it does it all for you. But I'm going to keep mine at 21. I think Mario moving at that pace looks pretty good. Now, because all of our code is still in place from the previous animation, we don't need to change anything because it's still just going to call this sprite. Just so happens that this sprite is quite a bit smaller. Now, there's going to be a problem. I'm going to see if you can figure out what that problem's going to be as we play this animation. So I'm going to play my game. We've got Mario. I'm going to press right. I'm going to release right. And I'm going to go left. We have a problem because it's still changing into the old left sprite, which we're going to need to replace. So we're going to pull the same trick that we did before. We're going to duplicate the previous one. So in this case, I'm going to right click and rename, just so I've got my name selected, Control and C to make a copy of that, and then I'm going to delete this sprite. So right click and delete to get rid of that. I just quickly want to show you, if I were to run my game now, the myriad of errors that will appear. Because when I try and turn left, it will tell me it can't find sprite underscore playing underscore running underscore RL. These error messages are really, really useful. They're not just an error message that you should ignore, they're really powerful to explain what problem is. Error in action number 1 of key press event for left key in object player. Error in this line of code, little arrow to say there's a problem starting here, unknown variable player running L. That's telling me it can't find it. These error messages are really useful, and you can copy it if you ever wanted to dump it. Perhaps you needed to email your lecturer for a little bit of help on that. You can copy it, or you can get a screenshot of it. So we know that's going to be a problem. So I'm going to right click and duplicate to get my character there, and I'm going to Control V to paste back in the name. We're going to do the same thing that we did before, though. We need to edit the sprite. We're not going to change animation this time. Animation is still fine. We just need to flip it the opposite way. If you can remember how to do that, that's fine. Do that now. If not, we need to transform, and we're going to mirror and flip in the way we did before. We're going to flip them the opposite way around. And that should now just work. And we've used a different technique for doing that. But as I said at the start, it can be a little bit frustrating using this technique. You'll also find it infuriatingly difficult sometimes to actually find graphics on the internet that are evenly spaced. So what I mean by that is when we look at our sprite sheet, and you don't need to follow along, this is just so I can explain for you. When you look at the sprite sheet that we've chosen, getting things that were evenly spaced was our challenge. Because if I show you another example, if I show you another one that I tried experimenting with this one here, if I try to evenly space this by values of about 60, 62, 63, what I find is perfectly spaced for this one, then it becomes a little bit iffy, then a little bit iffy, and it just becomes worse over time. And there's no number you can type in that just works. I mean, that's not too bad, but once I get to the start of his running animation, I promise you it's going to be a bit of a problem. Okay, you see that it's still going to start clipping. And if you've got it on multiple rows, it gets even more complicated. It's still a technique well worth your time and well worth looking into, but it can be a little bit difficult, a little bit more time consuming than the other technique. If you can find an animated GIF someone's already done, that's my preference. That's the one I'd recommend. If not, this works absolutely fine. The last thing that we're going to need to change, though, is when we do play our game, we'll notice that Mario is stopping at an unusual place when we release the key. You see now how he's stopping mid-stride. That's because in the previous animation, when we told it to stop on frame 3 used to be character stopped. Frame 3 now is character mid-stride, so we're going to need to say go to image 0 instead. Again, if you can remember how to do this, by all means pause the video and go and do that. If not, let's follow along. So when I press left, it changes the sprite to left and changes the image index to play. When I release left, it changes the image index to 3. We're going to change that to 0. Change it to picture 0. And remember, you need to do that to the right release in exactly the same way. Play a game, and that should work far, far better. Now he's stopping. Looks quite nice. Very well done. Well done, guys.